9 major downgraded WWE finishers. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos. Number 1. John Cena. While John Cena's attitude adjustment finisher isn't the most visually pleasing move in the world, thanks to elite booking over the years, the move was seen as legitimate and credible. The move is also incredibly safe for both Cena and his opponent, which is always a win. In 2018, Cena decided to change things up by debuting a new finishing move known as the 6th move of Doom. In theory, the idea of Cena debuting a new finisher was smart, as fans were often critical of his established moveset, but what Cena had in mind was beyond a joke. At the Super Showdown pay-per-view, Cena would finally perform the move, and it was simply one of the lamest moves in WWE history. Cena began to do a bizarre cross with his arms, and then he proceeded to throw a basic punch at Elias. An audible groan was let out by the fans as they were convinced that there was no way that this was legitimately Cena's new finishing move. The move was supposed to tie in with Cena doing a movie with Jackie Chan, but many fans failed to make this connection. Thankfully, Cena would only use this move on a few occasions, and by his next featured match on pay-per-view, Cena was back to using the attitude adjustment and the STF. Number 2. Alberto Del Rio. One of the strongest elements of Alberto Del Rio's initial presentation in WWE was his finishing move. Del Rio would use a cross-arm breaker as his finisher, and this meant that Del Rio stood out when compared to other members of the roster. Unfortunately, WWE just failed to commit long-term to having Del Rio use the move as his primary finisher, and eventually Del Rio began to use a standard kick to the head as his finisher. Whilst this move was often sold well, it was just unbelievably basic, as kicks of any kind were common parts of virtually every wrestler's moveset. Del Rio would use the move to win countless world titles, and he even used it to defeat John Cena clean. Number 3. Karrion Kross. During Karrion Kross's run in NXT, he had a number of finishes, and each one offered something new and unique. The forearm to the back of the skull often looked devastating, and there wasn't a single wrestler using this exact finisher in WWE at the time, so this certainly helped get the move over. Kross would use the cross jacket chokehold, and it was always welcome when a wrestler uses a choke as their finishing move, as it's easy to make it look credible. Unfortunately, during Kross's second WWE run, he debuted a new finishing move that pales in comparison to what came before. Kross's new move starts with a pump handle, then he proceeds to spin his opponent out of the move. It takes a lifetime to set up and receives a zero reaction from the live crowd. In recent months, Kross has evolved this finisher and seems to have ditched the pump handle element, yet even this has done little to positively alter the popularity or reputation of the move itself. Number 4. Becky Lynch. Wrestlers at the top of the WWE ladder introducing a new finisher isn't anything new. Yet when Becky Lynch debuted her new finishing move, the Manhandle Slam, it didn't receive the reception WWE or Lynch even expected. The move was introduced as a central finisher in 2019, and the Manhandle Slam finishing move is virtually a rock bottom, but the move always looks sloppy. The move relies on the opponent jumping as high as humanly possible, yet most of the time, Lynch's opponents barely jump for the move, so it always looks horrendous. According to Lynch, during an appearance on Out of Character, she did indeed ask permission from the Great One himself to use the move. I use a variation of the rock bottom before, but it's just easier to just get it and go. I asked The Rock if I could use it, and he was very gracious and said I could. I called him, told him how SummerSlam was going to go down, and said, here's what I'm thinking. I'm supposed to hit one move on her, Bianca Belair. Can I use this? He said yeah. There was more. He was so awesome and so gracious with his time and his advice. To be able to get advice from one of the best like that and somebody who's busy like that, it makes you feel very happy. Lynch is insanely talented, so she could have easily have come up with a better finishing move. Unfortunately, Lynch has been using the move for over half a decade now, and there appears to be no signs that Lynch plans on retiring the now infamous finisher. Number 5. Mark Henry. Mark Henry has mainly used two finishing moves in WWE, the Big Splash and the World's Strongest Slam. The latter of these won Henry his first and only world title in WWE in 2011, so the move was considered credible and legitimate despite just literally being a slam to the mat. There was a brief period in which Henry left these two respective moves behind, and WWE and Henry tried to get the bear hug over as his new finishing move. WWE was so insistent on the move becoming a big deal in the company that Henry would win countless matches with the move, including a major pay-per-view match against Kane at One Night Stand in 2007. Number 6. Dolph Ziggler. The zigzag wasn't the most flashy move in the world during Dolph Ziggler's WWE run, yet it was unique enough to receive a reaction. Fans seemed to like the move being used by Ziggler. Gradually over time, however, Ziggler began to use this move on a less frequent basis, and he would start to use a superkick as his main finishing move. This was disappointing, as it's well documented just how overused a superkick is in modern wrestling, and with Ziggler now using the move as his finisher, he was just failing to stand out. This wasn't to say that Ziggler's version of the move was bad, as that simply wasn't true. It just didn't make Ziggler's finisher stick out, and he ultimately just became another guy that was suddenly using a once protected move as his finisher. Number 7. Chris Jericho. Sadly, Chris Jericho has made a career out of downgrading his finishing move. In 2001, Jericho introduced the world to the breakdown. The move was basically the skull-crushing finale, but the move was just so basic and lifeless, and it was no surprise that the move was quickly erased. Jericho would then downgrade his finisher yet again in 2007 when he introduced the Codebreaker. The Codebreaker has stuck around since Jericho introduced the move, yet there's no denying that the move is inferior to the Walls of Jericho or even the Lion Salt. In recent years, Jericho has debuted the Judas Effect. Whilst this is an incredibly legitimate elbow strike and can look amazing in matches, Jericho's version of the move isn't exactly great, and Andrade does an elite version of the move that is hard to match. In relation to Jericho's motivation for introducing the Judas Effect, he stated on Talk Is Jericho that he got the idea from the Great Muta. Once again, I got the idea from the Great Muta, switching up finishers. When the moonsault starts tearing up his knees apart, what did he do? A shining wizard, a jumping knee. It's so easy, but once you beat a couple of guys with it, then suddenly it's over, and that's what wrestling is all about. Number 8. Seth Rollins. It's sometimes the case that wrestlers have no choice but to downgrade their finisher. Sometimes the company they perform for, such as WWE, can declare a ban on that finishing move, and this usually comes down to major safety concerns. This was the case in 2015 when Vince McMahon believed that Seth Rollins' curb stomp was unsafe. McMahon believed that the kids could easily replicate the move, and stomping people's heads into the ground wasn't a great look for WWE. This put Rollins in a difficult position as he was so established for using the curb stomp that it was going to be a tough task for fans to accept a new finishing move. Rollins would mainly use the pedigree as his new finisher, but he would also use several other moves, including a jumping knee to the head and a variation of a falling DDT. None of these moves were received well, and all fans would do is complain about the status of the curb stomp. Eventually, after the longest time, McMahon reverted the ban, and although Rollins still uses the pedigree in matches, the curb stomp is once again established as the former WWE Champion's primary finishing move. And number 9, Kevin Owens. There was a lot of criticism directed at Kevin Owens when he decided to use the stunner as his new finisher. The pop-up powerbomb that Owens had been using always received a nuclear reaction, and although the move looked brutal, it was incredibly easy to pull off and was deemed as a safe move for his opponent to take. According to Owens during an interview with Fightful, he wanted to introduce the stunner, as he felt like everyone was doing a powerbomb and delivering a new move would make him stand out. I asked Austin if I could do it, first and foremost. I'd been thinking about it for a while. This was back in 2016-17, and I felt like everybody was doing a powerbomb of some sort, just short of doing pop-up powerbombs. I'm pretty sure I saw some guys do it too. That's a whole other thing people take from other people, and we're all on the same show and the same team. That's a whole other issue. I was seeing all these people doing powerbombs and I wanted to stand out with something different. At the same time, I wanted to do something that people can be excited about. I got this feeling of maybe I can use a stunner. In recent months, the pop-up powerbomb has made a resurgence on TV, so hopefully Owens begins to slowly reintroduce the move back into his established finisher. But there you have it, folks, 9 major downgraded WWE finishes. Be sure to leave your comments down below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.